Welcome to the Prepping Patriots podcast.
Oh, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. Wow.
It's Tuesday.
I feel like the last 2 days have just dragged on. I think I told my wife yesterday. Is it Friday yet?
Right. Right. Yes. I feel the same way because last week it was great. Last week was great. Last 2 weeks have been great, right? The weather was beautiful up here in Wisconsin. We were in like high 70s last week. And then this weekend it snowed.
The cold snap.
It
Yeah.
snowed. And
Snowed for us as well.
and it was a bit depressing.
Yeah, from our side, all of our trees just started blooming. We had beautiful pink flowers and white flowers, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I might actually get some fruit this year on these trees. And then it started snowing, and I'm like, oh no, I didn't check the weather at all. I didn't get any kind of like bags to cover the trees or anything. So luckily I went out today, took some pictures. Everything's doing great, but I totally thought I would lose all of our buds and get no fruits again this year.
Oh yeah. I was worried about because I planted, the only thing I have in the ground is potatoes. So I know that they say potatoes are a little more frost hardy, but we'll find out. We'll find out here in a few
I'm sure they'll
weeks.
be fine.
I'm sure they'll be fine. And if not, I have 4 more bags of started potatoes up there that I have to still cut up and get in rows. So we have more. We have our backups to our potatoes, because the 2 crops I really am going to do big, 3, 4. And you know what? The entire garden's going to be huge. So, but I plan on doing an extra large on potatoes and an extra large on sweet corn this year. And then I was looking into your last podcast. We talked about gardens. We're going to hit on them a little bit today too, just from a different perspective. But you had mentioned last show about doing vertical gardening and doing archways for cucumbers and green beans. So I was looking at trying to find cattle paneling for that. I can't find cattle panel anywhere. Tractor Supply, Fleet Farm, I can't find cattle panel.
Really?
They're all sold out. It's a popular product.
I mean, okay, so that's if you want the long term. So I did cattle paneling from Tractor Supply, galvanized metal, galvanized steel, 4 foot wide by 16 feet long, I want to say.
Yeah.
So that's going above and beyond. I mean, that's really, you're putting in the infrastructure for long-term usage, which that's what we're usually planning for. And as we get into our discussion today, that's where that leads to. But I mean, when I was at Monticello at Jefferson's Estate, I mean, they just had pieces of tree that had fallen over, they were just scrap pieces. Stick it in the ground, grab some twine, and you can interweave your own netting. Or, I mean, you could do some very basic stuff.
Yeah, and I looked at that
to just get something up and running.
That's what I did last year. I just used some ground stakes, some garden stakes, with some metal fencing, galvanized metal fencing, for the 4 foot tall stuff, and it grew on that just fine. But I really like the idea of just walking through and reaching up and picking all of your stuff. So
it's glorious.
Yeah, and I'm because the goal is. So with the big garden, it's a big garden. We're going to grow a crap ton of food. I also am trying to make it look presentable and nice, because there's
aesthetically pleasing.
Everybody that goes down, we're on a corner. So we're on a road that's pretty busy, but then there's a side road. The corner road is nothing. It dead ends. And that's the side the garden's on. And it's wide open. There's no privacy fence. Everybody can see what I'm growing, which is a security matter. I do have plans on shoring up that security matter as far as privacy goes. But I wanted to look presentable, so I liked the whole cattle paneling arch thing, because that would look really, really cool.
One of the things that I'm going to be buying this year for that, just for that scenario, I'm probably gonna. Now that you say that Tractor Supply didn't have any, I'm concerned about supply in my area, so I'm going to look that up. But Costco has some solar LED lights, really pretty LED lights that you can run strings around the tops. And then it's just a little solar cell that sits up on top, so you don't have to plug it into anything. And at nighttime, lights it up, and you can continue to pick from your cucumbers, your green beans, or whatever, even as the daylight fades. That's what we plan on doing this year.
Yeah, navigate all the mosquitoes, but
Yeah. But as it starts to cool down later on in the year, it gets a little bit better. But
yeah, I mean, you'll have to. We got.
That's where. And for mosquitoes, there's things to help with that as well. We've got what's the plant that we? See, my wife needs to be on here so she can make comments. But a common mosquito deterrent plant. I'll look it up.
Right.
We didn't plant it, and I wish we would have. We just had them all over the place. We had them in pots. It kept all the mosquitoes away. We had barely any mosquitoes. I'll look it up.
That's cool. And then, I mean, outside of that, like the weekend, we
citronella.
That's it. Because they have the citronella candles. Anyway, that's a plant. Yeah, that's a plant. Anyway,
it's a plant. Yeah. Get that plant that around your swampy areas, kind of like in the back where you don't care. Guerrilla gardening that. Just stick it out in the middle of the trees, and it'll keep your mosquitoes away.
I don't know what guerrilla gardening is.
Guerrilla gardening?
I'm sure we'll get into that.
We're going to talk about it.
I'm sure we're going to get into that, but we did make another step forward in our preparedness plan, our master plan. We did finally get the chicks. I got 14 chicks that are in the brooder.
Do you have a picture or videos or anything?
Yeah. I got a video here, and I got some pictures.
Sweet.
But yeah,
I'm so jealous.
So we ordered 12, and we ended up with 14 because they gave us the wrong box. So yeah.
Are they the right chickens though? At least.
3 of the breeds are. One of the breeds is a mystery breed. I have no idea.
Okay.
So yeah, there they are. They're
Look at those little guys.
Okay. Right.
Well, gals.
They're cute. Okay, these things are the cutest things in the world. I get it. People are like, oh, little chicks. These are the messiest freaking animals on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
We have to because they say the first week you lay paper towels and stuff down, because if you lay bedding, they'll eat it, and it's not good. So we have to wait at least a week to put bedding down. And I'm going to do the deep litter method on the bedding side of things, but we changed this. This is completely clean. In 3 hours, this will be full of poop and feed, and it's an absolute mess. You have to clean it twice a day.
Do you have a heat source? Where's your heat source? I guess you're in your house, or
no. See that little black box?
Oh, there? Okay.
That's the brooder. That it's a heating plate, so it's not a heat lamp. So they can get under. It
just looks really low, so I thought it was something that they stood on. So
they stand. I know what it is. I'm good on it. They do all that, but the chicks go under there, and that's made to mimic like them laying under a brooder.
Mama hen.
They get there. They cuddle right up against the plate there. It gets warm enough for them, but it eliminates the risk of like a heat lamp, because if you get a heat lamp too close, you can kill your chicks because you can fry them. So that's what we did.
So that one looks like it hangs.
No,
or does it have legs?
It's on 4 posts, 4 post legs that adjust. But it was part of this kit.
I was just gonna say,
it was part of the kit that we got with this brooder. This brooder is kind of like a fold-out tent material. So when you're done, it folds down real nice and compact. 48 inches wide. I mean, it's big, and it just worked for us. So that's what we did, and so we are now chicken owners. So the next step I need to do is figure out a coop, whether I build one or buy one. And the coop pricing, because now I have 14 chicks, so I need a coop that can comfortably hold 14 chicks, or 14 fully grown chickens. And the pricing I saw is anywhere between like $1,500 plus the cost of the run, all the way up to $3,000 plus the cost of the run.
Oh my gosh.
And the $1,500 one was like, oh, this is cool. But when I priced out materials, for me to build like an 8x8 just lean-to house for the chicks, I mean, you figure that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 10 sheets of 4x8 plywood. at what, $50, $60 a piece.
Yeah.
If I want 3/4 plus the Tyvek and then the siding and then the roof and the shingles, and if I want to put a window in there, I mean, you're at 15, 16, $2,000 right there just by building it. So it's in any case, so those are the next things that I'm looking at is building or buying. I've looked at a couple coop companies that have really good reviews that I'm considering, like, let me just buy a coop and be done with it rather than build one. I don't know. Still debating on that. So that's what we did this weekend.
Well, I did look up on my school traditional skills that I'm signed up for, and there is plenty of stuff in here for chickens, backyard chickens, meat birds, egg birds, whatever. And they've got, so I really like this School of Traditional Skills website. They released it last year. I want to say towards the later end of the year. And there's so much content in here. I need to spend more time on it. And they're continually adding more and more. And I wasn't sure, when you first buy it, because they only release it for a certain amount of time because they wanted to see how it works out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You could have done like a 1 year, a 3 year, or a lifetime, whatever, to purchase your plan. And I did not want to purchase the lifetime because who knows, a solar flare could pop off, or it could be really garbage content. There's so many different things out there, variables, that what's my money worth, and should I put it out there to get the content and the details? So I only paid for 1 year, but they have everything from, if you're going to grow, back to Eden gardening.
Yeah.
Listening to his content and just the mindset behind gardening and the nutrition and the dirt and he starts going through like all the permaculture stuff. There is so much content in there that alone was worth it. So, I think I'm like halfway or 15 lessons in, and I feel like I've learned more in this one video than I've learned in the last like year of watching YouTube videos and that kind of stuff.
Okay. So devil's advocate.
But they also have a raised section in here.
What's the difference between this
going to YouTube and just watching it?
Just going to YouTube and watching other videos.
Yeah. It's all of your information all brought together, nice, clean, understandable lessons from start to finish. So, this one, for example, with, Justin Rhodes, Justin Rhodes, very popular guy out there. This is all 26 of his lessons from start to finish, how you can raise a year of chicken meat in 58 days. But he goes through every single, from start to finish. Here's your brooder. Here's your setup outside. Here's the things that worked. Here's the things that failed. There's a notes section. You have resources. They give you all the skill sheets. So like if we go to the, we'll do this one. I'll download it just so you guys can have an inside look of what it looks like. But by the time you're done with taking this class, you'll be able to know what kind of birds to invest in, what worked and what didn't work. Here's your material costs. He goes in through exact measurements of everything. If you have this many birds, you need this much feed. Here's how you can offset your costs. Your heat lamps, here's recommendations. They've got links to everything if you want to go out to Amazon or just price match yourself.
Right.
But it's got everything in here. The first 14 days, moving your chicks to pasture. It's, I don't know. It's nice because it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah. Because I know Justin at sometimes some of his YouTube content, he's real big on, like, he does use feed a lot for his animals, but he also supplements, like, that's just a supplement. And he uses a lot of pasture stuff. Because the question I get into with any types of how-tos, like, here's how you raise chickens. Like, I get it, right? Here, chickens, you can buy a bunch of chickens, you can get a roost, you can do all this, get all the supplies. They can live off feed, and you can have eggs, and everybody's happy. But then as a prepper and a prepared mindset goes, you're like, what if the supply chain gets interrupted and I can't get feed? How do I feed my chickens? And, if it's
for this,
that's kind of where my head goes all the time.
Yeah, for this specific class, no, he doesn't have that. I know he's got videos on YouTube that are more along those lines where if you're looking at it from a business perspective, here's what kind of money you can make. If you're looking at it from a long-term perspective and you want to just have these at home, but you don't want to pay the feed costs, or people are noticing that certain chicken feed that they're using for the chickens is making them not lay eggs or die off or whatever. So stop using this certain kind of chicken feed. There are plenty of videos out there on alternatives. Like I think we brought it up on the last podcast, raising your own black soldier flies or something like that.
Yeah.
There's scenarios like that are really easy to set up 3 or 4 boxes in your backyard. You know, it's a one-time setup. All you got to do is add food scraps in the future, maybe buy your initial set of black soldier flies and call it a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just continually keeps on redoing itself. So, anyways, I really liked this. I thought it was really good. There is a lot of content in here. I mean, a lot of content. And I don't feel like I can spend enough time to do it. This is what I listen to in my, like, during lunch breaks or something like that, where I'll pick it up and just start, if I want something to listen to. But my problem is my ADD kicks in, and when I'm trying to do work and I've got this playing in the background, I'm like, oh, what about this? And I take notes on this and I write down all the stuff. It's not how so I can't do this while I'm working. It's just music only, and that's pretty much all I can do. But I'll get this printed off for you, just so that you've got it for your own resource.
So two follow-ups I have on this, and then we'll move on. I like this because it's laser hyper focused on specific things that you want to accomplish. YouTube, could you get this information on YouTube? Yes. Are you going to have to sift through search engines and things like that to try to find specifically what you're looking for? Absolutely. Are you going to have to muddle through some of the people that are delivering bad information? Yes. So I like this because everything's kind of brought into one platform. And how much is this?
That's a great question. I don't remember.
I wonder if I can also find this, because it's nice, and if it's affordable.
It's got $29 a month if you want to just go out there and download everything, watch some videos, focus on one thing. But I paid $290 because they didn't have a monthly fee when I first did it.
So $290 a year, and they're continually adding content. It's just growing and growing.
And I want to say
$1,590 for a lifetime.
Yeah, which is, I mean, you see that and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. I don't see the value in that because I can get this information everywhere. Like, this is a person's view, and there's lots of views out there. But I think since I was the very first person to sign up, I don't think I paid $290. I might have paid like $200 or something like that, like $199 or something.
The font is killing me right now.
It's really bad.
The font is killing me. Anyway, okay.
But
so that's
like I said, for the content that's out there right now, personally, I would just go do the monthly. Go out there, download all. I mean, like I said, you go out there and you can. So like this class is homestead planning and design. Like that's what I've been interested in. I've watched a lot of different. I'm subscribed to a lot of different channels where they're giving you advice on, you know, if you're going to be doing farming or gardening, you want to do it on the southern side of a mountain range. If you're going to be living up in the mountains because of the sun is there sooner and it lasts longer and yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
That's the kind of stuff that you don't think of unless you're watching people that homestead or plan this kind of stuff out. So getting your supplies, creating your wish list, I mean, all that kind of stuff. It's nice having the documents. So even if you were going to look at it from, and the other guy that is by far probably one of the smartest individuals I've ever listened to. What is Brandon's last name? I can't even remember what it is. I just know it's Brandon. Well, anyways, I'm forgetting his name. But he is a butcher. He goes through every single kind of, like, if you're going to do pork, if you're going to do ducks, if you're going to do geese, if you're going to do whatever. I'll send you a video sometime of him just talking about pork.
Yeah.
He is extensive in every single butchering that he does, but he goes into the history of it and the types of, like for your pigs, having them being able to eat hazelnuts and then giving them milk from your cow or the extra, whatever milk makes the meat so much better, and the consistency and this and this and this. I mean, it's really, really good work. And I didn't know. So Justin Rhodes, Brandon, and who's the other chicken guy that's well known? Builds coops the rabbits and the chickens together. You know this. You just brought his name up on the last podcast. But Joel Salatin, he's on here as well.
Oh, nice.
When I saw those three people, I was like, sold. You sold me right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm sold with those three. Like, Joel Salatin is like the godfather of homesteading and farming as far as livestock.
I think it's strategy maybe for his. Yeah, Reclaiming Pastures with Joe Salatin. So, anyways, that's my recommendation. We're not sponsored by anybody or, anything like that, but
I mean, after that, shoot.
Highly recommend it. I know, I need to get him sponsored.
Right? But no, I like that because it gets into those types of things. Learning those skill sets and things like that are good in the now, just to learn how to do. But they're also good as you start venturing into, like, I'm a new gardener, I'm a new chicken owner. Like, I'm a new chicken owner. I'm going to have so many things that I'm going to learn in this next year, just owning and caring for birds. And the reward of that investment of time and energy and education, I'm going to get free eggs. Like, I can't, dude, check. I mean, come on. In 12 weeks.
I'm jealous. You don't have to sell me.
12 weeks, right? With 14 birds, I can potentially get a dozen eggs a day. Do you know how
day.
I can dedicate a freeze dryer to freeze drying just eggs, powdered gold.
And I've seen people do that. And I've been part of a lot of different freeze drying groups. And I know one lady, she's like, I've been freeze drying eggs every day for the last 3 years. I have so many powdered eggs. She's like, I've done Mylar bags. I've got entire 5-gallon barrels full of just powder. I'm like, okay, that's maybe a little excessive for eggs. But she's like, I've used it so much where I'm donating it to people, or I'm donating it to charities where they now have fresh eggs anytime they want them.
Yeah, and that's the cool part of, like, if you have a freeze dryer and you have you overproduce and you just have extras and stuff like that, you could store them and add to your stockpile, or you can be generous and give some of that stuff away. And there's always somebody that's going to take that. But it leads into, like, the chickens and all that. Like, that's all part of a master plan. We talked in a show, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, a month ago, whatever, we talked about planning and all that stuff. But that whole cycle of planning and, like, this is the next step in our plan, chickens. And we're executing on that. We're not rushing through and trying to do all 17 things we're trying to do at once. We're one at a time, learn a skill, move on, things like that. But that gets into really what the ultimate goal, at least for us, is. And that's self-sustainability. Mm-hmm. Whether it's just from a day-to-day, the world is fine, and we just want to live a lifestyle of self-sustainability because healthier food, there's a lot of benefits to self-sustainability. That's our goal, is to be self-sustaining, probably 80% self-sustaining, because we still live in a suburb, so we do have certain limitations, like I can't have pigs, I can't have a cow, so we're trying to get, 80% self-sustainability, have enough crops and stuff, have some chickens, do some rabbits for protein, do aquaponics, potentially getting that fired back up for another protein source of fish.
Oh man,
for that long-term sustainability. But we want to get into the habit of trying to be self-sustaining now while things are good, so that when things aren't good, our life isn't getting flipped upside down. Like, we don't have to rush and learn how to be self-sustainable. We're already living that lifestyle now. And that gets into, like,
definitely
the difference between, I look at preparedness in kind of two ways. I look at it as, like, the doom and gloom, SHTF, just crashes and burns. Preparing for that, preparing for the solar flare, preparing for World War III, like the stuff that not a lot of people talk about and think about because it's not headline news or anything like that. but there's a risk out there for it. We've already hammered on that. We're going to continue to hammer on that. There's scientific evidence about all this stuff and about like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So we're preparing for that. And then the second side of it is kind of like, I don't even want to call it the short-term preparedness, but more like what's going on in our world now that there's a likely event that there's a likelihood of something happening. Like right now it's the financial system. Like every news media outlet, alternative news, major news, like they're all talking about the decline in a recession. Like it's going to happen. Or
even something as basic as weather, weather. Where if you're, depending on the season and depending on where you're located, wildfires are big right now. Tornadoes are huge. I mean, that was just all over the news on some of the tornadoes that ripped through.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking short term, just the little things that can happen in life, for some reason your paycheck doesn't go through because they run into a system glitch. Glitches are happening all day long, every day. I think I just saw today that not Spirit Airlines, Southwest Airlines, they had another glitch. They grounded all of their planes this morning. I don't know if you saw that,
but I didn't see that.
They had a system with their landing whatever for all planes, and so they grounded all planes. Now I think it was shortly after, like an hour later, that they end up saying, okay, flights are back being active again. But you've seen the glitches in the banking system. You've seen the glitches in whatever. So say you don't get paid, your bills that aren't going to get paid because you didn't get your paycheck. I mean, that's a short-term prep. Trying to make sure that you have a backup money supply. Everybody should have an emergency fund. I mean, we follow the Dave Ramsey way. Now we've fallen off of it and gone back onto it a few times. But that's
Everybody
life. You're not always going to have the perfect financial situation, but having your $1,000 emergency fund, having your 3 to 6 months of savings for, if you lose your job or something like that. To me, those are short term compared to the long term, like you were saying, where the solar flares, financial collapse, global World War III, stuff like that. Adding context to your short terms.
Yeah, my point being though that I look at it kind of in those two lanes: the short term moments and the long term. You like that? You like how I integrated the beat?
It's so good.
I'm getting
it's
there.
So good.
I'm getting there. And then the long term, like we're preparing for the long haul, which is the title of today's show.
Yeah.
Like we want to talk about preparing for the long haul. The short term stuff we've talked about. We're going to continue to talk about. But it's the long haul. And how do you define long haul? And that's, I think, the first thing. What do you define it as? Is that a scenario where you're having to be self-sustainable for 2 months, 6 months, or a year? When is like considered the long haul? In my definition of long haul, I would say I have to sustain myself for a year or more, because in the short-term preps, I typically have enough, like I am building to that year supply of food. So I'm working on the short-term stuff, that year supply of freeze-dried food. The water, rain collection, regenerative rain collection, filtering, things like that. Like the basic needs we all need: food, water, shelter. The short-term stuff. Anything over, so we're working towards that year goal of having the short-term disaster preparedness kind of kit ready to go. Whether that's weather disaster, whether that's, financial system goes under, whether that's supply chain for some reason stops for 6 months or there's shortages, like that's a short-term disaster because there's the light at the end of the tunnel. When I talk about the long haul, it's like, okay, now let's just say the solar flare hits or an EMP device goes off or whatever happens that's going to affect our lives for more than a year. Because if the power grid goes down because of a solar flare and EMP, it's staying down for at least a year. Like people need to just understand that. It's not coming back for at least a year.
At the best, 6 months.
At the best, 6 months. But they don't have have you seen videos of these ginormous house-sized transformers that are on these these things are massive. They weigh a ton. They're expensive. They get made in like 17 different countries. And like we don't have a warehouse full of backups of these things. They'd have to get built. And if you don't have power...
And they're not built here. Just to add emphasis, we do not have any factories manufacturing of transformers in the United States today. All transformers, especially the ones that are part of our grid today, if they had to get a replacement transformer, because you can't just pick up any transformer and put it in place. It has to meet certain criteria. It has to be able to handle the amount of load, whatever the case may be. 98% of those are from another country. We manufacture them in China, Korea, whatever.
Some of the big ones come out of Italy,
yeah.
The point of that being, like, if it is some type of electromagnetic event where some of these transformers go, it's going to be a hot minute before you get your power back. So the long haul of that is, okay, I don't have power for a year. How do I sustain myself for a year? I mean, and we can get into that can dive into so many different topics of, like, you got your security side, your guns, your ammo, your food, your water, your community, your shelter. Like, that can get into a whole scope of things. But to drill down, we're not going to try to hit it all tonight. I mean, we'd be here for 6.5 hours trying to hit it all tonight. I think the most important thing, security is important. Don't get me wrong. I love guns. I have guns. I'm all about it, right? But I'm not talking about guns tonight. I'm talking about food. And how do you sustain yourself with food? How do you sustain yourself with water? Long term, more than a year. You go a year, okay, your year supply of freeze-dried food is now gone because you've used it all. Mm-hmm. Now what? What do you do?
And
what's your plan?
You may not have seeds because you bought seeds and you never used them, or they went bad because they had humidity to them, or were stored stored improperly, something like that. So when it comes to that topic, that's where I'll pick up from here.
Yep. Go ahead.
Last year is where I wanted to start up on what are those long-term gardening items that I can put in place that are going to come back year after year. So we've all heard of perennials, but most of the time you hear about perennials when it comes to flowers. But there's certain vegetables, there's certain fruits that you should always keep in mind that come back year after year. And I've got some of them that are growing right now in my garden, and I'll get it up on my screen a little bit later here to show you the progress on them. But to JT's point, some of the other items are like your potatoes, your carrots, your stuff that's going to store long-term in storage, cabbage, squash,
I didn't even think about
all
that.
sorts of stuff.
I just had a light bulb moment. When you said that.
What was it?
You don't have power, so you can't freeze dry this crap.
No. So going back to the olden days and what did they used to do? That's where fermenting came into play. That's where canning came into play. You got to think about what was used back then. So water bathing, canning, and fermenting are your top 3 items, besides like a root cellar where you're just going to keep it cool and hopefully it stays good as long as it can be. But last year when I started planting our garden, we started doing those crap. We're going to go to World War III. Supply chains are going to shut down. I need to get stuff in the ground now. I need to figure out how to plant potatoes. I need to figure out what items I can plant today that will continually keep on coming back, where I don't have to worry about not having seeds or not having a supply chain to deliver those items to me. Because as soon as one of those events happens, Amazon's probably not going to be getting you supplies next day. People are going to want to take care of their own families. People are going to want to take care of, whatever the case may be. Just expect your next day delivery to not be an option. So I planted asparagus. I bought 2 different kinds of asparagus. So if you don't know this, asparagus is a perennial. It comes back year after year for a minimum 15 years. It's usually 15 to 20 years that asparagus keeps coming back. You usually wait 2 to 3 years for it to establish. So you plant your asparagus. They look like roots, okay? They're called crowns. So just imagine a flatter, bulkier piece on top, and then you've got all these roots dangling from it, okay? That top part's the crown, and that's what you put towards the top of the surface. Once you plant that and your asparagus starts growing, the first year or 2, you just want it to keep growing. And what it does, I never knew this until I planted asparagus, but for asparagus, as it grows taller, at the top of asparagus heads, you've got the they look like scales
Like
kind of thing,
scales or
where they
seed
just stack
pods
over
and
top of each
things.
other. Those actually branch out into your branches to make like ferns. And that's what gathers all the nutrition. And there's actually like female and male versions of asparagus as well. Like there's, I don't know how to explain it because I'm still learning it as I go as well. But let them fern out. You want them to get big and bushy for at least a year. It depends on how old your crowns are. So I bought crowns last year that were already like 3 years old. And so this year, I mean, it just snowed yesterday, but I'll get pictures up here. I already have asparagus popping on the ground, and it's April 18th. And they're as thick as my thumb. I mean, they are thick. They're probably 1.5 inches in thickness and diameter. And I've got some that are already 1 foot to 2 feet tall. I mean, they are just taking off.
A half a cup of cooked asparagus is 0.2 grams of fat, 1.8 gram of fiber, 2.2 grams of protein, 20 calories, and 3.7 grams of carbs in a half a cup of asparagus. So it's got a lot of different things in it.
It's very nutritional. It comes back year after year. It spreads. So just like strawberries and stuff like that. And again, I learned all this stuff last year and the year before. Some people are, may really like strawberries, but don't know that they spread like wildfire, like their vines and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But asparagus will continually to spread underground, and they grow in a lot of different environments, like your clay type of soil. You can do anything from loamy to clay, and they'll do just fine. You can grow them in sunlight, full sunlight, or you can grow them in the shade of trees. I know watching another channel, I think it's the Back to Eden Gardening, actually. He actually plants his asparagus underneath his trees, and they come back year round every year, all day long. I mean, handful of bushels every day that he's picking off these things. I mean, and they've got all different kinds and types.
I love me some cooked asparagus. Pan fry that junk, put a little salt, put a little lemon on there. My wife hates them. She because she's like, they're stringy. Like when you bite into them, they
okay, so that's the starch, and that might be because of it not being cooked all the way. Different ways of preparing it. What you need to look at is the different types of asparagus. So you've got Jersey Giants that are like thick, 2-inch, 3-inch thick stalks that, I mean, they're you're constant. They're going to give you a lot of volume and give you a lot of amount. But then you also have ones like I have, Purple Passion, and they're sweet. Like you can cut it at the stalk and actually eat it straight from the garden and not have to cook them. They're not starchy. So they've got a great crisp and that kind of stuff. So you just got to look at the different kinds. But asparagus is one. Some that I haven't planted yet that I really want to plant are rhubarb, which comes back year after year. And you always hear of rhubarb pie, strawberry rhubarb. Yeah. I watched a great video on a subscriber called Gridlessness, where they made strawberry candies. It was strawberry sour, it's rhubarb sour candy is what it's called. And basically, you're just taking sugar and water. You're making a kind of syrup. You're taking your rhubarb into, 4-inch cut segments, and then cutting them straight down the... Rhubarb is kind of like celery. It's got the like little U dip and long structure. But you just cut that in half, stick it in this syrupy mixture, stick it in like a bag, like a gallon-sized bag, and now you've got these sweet and sour bites. It's healthy for you in the sense of, not the sugar aspect, but if you're needing something where you don't have candies being made for you anymore because of the long-term piece, if you can't go to the store and get your Hershey bars or your Reese's or whatever that you really like to eat, what are you going to do to satisfy that sugar crave or that sweetness that you're always looking for?
I fully intend to, when it crosses that line, when people start looting, I fully intend to go loot me some Hershey bars. Like, it is in my brain. Hershey bars, Reese's peanut butter cups are the two things, and marshmallows.
I love Reese's peanut butter cups.
Three items that I'm going to go loot. I won't loot anything else because but I will go. I will go do those 3 things because ain't nothing like a pick me up, like a spirit morale pick me up, than a fire with some marshmallows and you got 2 Reese's peanut
some
butter
s'mores.
Cups yeah, buddy.
So that's the one thing about freeze drying that super bums me out is that chocolate. You can't freeze dry chocolate.
Yeah, I know.
Like the oils in it and that kind of stuff and the dairy.
Yeah.
Like
it is a battle, but
it kind of bums me out. But you can do marshmallows.
You can do marshmallows and they're amazing.
I've done lots of marshmallows. They are fantastic.
But like that's the thing with freeze drying, because now that you got me thinking about the freeze drying, like we have a freeze dryer, you have a freeze dryer, we're freeze drying food, we're storing it up, but when it goes all down, if it's a power thing, we're done freeze drying.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we have our solar.
We've got a solar generator. Yeah,
the
I was
solar
gonna say.
generators, the freeze dryers. I looked up the amperage. Like, in order to run a freeze dryer a full 36 to 40 hour cycle, that it needs. I think it was like 2.7.
Yours takes 36 hours?
Some things take 36 hours, yeah.
Oh, I guess. Okay. A lot of the stuff that I've been doing, just like fruits and veggies, are pretty much 24 to 30 hours. 24
my blueberries took
usually.
like 50 some hours.
Did you poke holes in them?
Well, they have a little divot at the top. Whoa.
No. Yeah. And those are the lessons that we learn, right? So take a chopstick, a poker, put a hole right through that blueberry. It cuts the time down in half.
So we cut the grapes in half. The grapes are
grapes
weird.
in half.
Freeze-dried grapes are weird. It's like a cross between a raisin and something else.
It's like a candy, though. It turns into that, like, not a Skittle, but like a... It's definitely a candy consistency, and it's sweet. So the first time you try one, you're like, I don't know. But then you get that, the tightness in the back of the cheeks. You're like, okay, that was kind of good. And you just, then they become poppable. Yeah. And they are, green grapes are, oh my gosh.
And not to diverge too far, not to diverge too far and go down a rabbit trail of this. We had ice cream, and I'm like, I want to try some freeze-dried strawberries and blueberries in my ice cream, and that's where the blueberries shine, because you eat the ice cream and it gave the ice cream a little bit of a crunch and a sweetness of blueberry, and then you got the freeze-dried strawberry simultaneously, which isn't crunchy. It's just
I thought you were talking about freeze-dried ice cream. Did you do freeze-dried ice cream with that? Okay, regular ice cream with freeze-dried fruit in it.
Ice cream with freeze-dried food in it is amazing, absolutely amazing. But
it is.
But in a grid down, we don't have freeze dryers anymore.
Yep. So we actually have an ice cream maker that doesn't require power. And we've been making ice cream a lot. So last year, my wife got really into making ice cream. That's been fun. And for the freeze-dried fruits that go in it, well, freeze-dried fruits in general, if anybody's in the area around me, they've probably had my wife's cupcakes. She did her own business for a while, but she takes freeze-dried strawberries, powders them, then adds the powder into her frosting and into her cupcakes. The burst of flavor from freeze-dried fruits in general, freeze-dried fruits just automatically have their flavor enhanced.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're taking out the moisture, and so it's just, exactly, 100-fold. It takes out all the water and the moisture from it, so all you have is the flavor. So powdering strawberries and blueberries. My wife just made blueberry muffins for me yesterday. Or no, sorry, I said muffins. They're cupcakes. They were dense. But they were probably the best cupcake I've ever had in my life. And I've had a lot of cakes. I mean, you don't get this kind of gut from, whatever. But anyways, we're going off topic. We need to go back to where we were. Yeah. We're talking about long-term plants. And I wanted to focus on this podcast on perennial plants specifically. Okay, so perennials come back year after year. Asparagus is a big one. Highly recommend that. Like I said, 15 to 20 years, keeps on coming back. Rhubarb is another one. I want to do that one. I haven't done it yet. I love rhubarb. I think it tastes good. It depends on how you prepare it. Artichokes. Now, have you ever had artichoke? I put you on the spot. You went off camera. No. But if you're still there, have you had artichokes before?
I love artichokes. My wife loves artichokes.
I've never had an artichoke. I've never had an artichoke before. So, but those come back year after year. So something to keep in mind. Now, and then horseradish.
So out of all these plants, you're about to get on horseradish. All these plants that you are mentioning, are all of them from a climate perspective or like a zone good in all zones, or like are
most zones?
Okay.
So if we look up asparagus, I want to say it was like 3 through 11 or something like that, which is pretty much everywhere. 3 to 8 for asparagus, which is top of Minnesota all the way down to bottom of Georgia. Like that's like the whole United States.
Okay.
The only parts that you're not going to get it is like, yeah, you're hands down you can do it. Okay. Like the only places you really can't do it is the very southern tip of Texas and the southern half of Florida. Like, but you're getting a lot of other things that the rest of us aren't getting if you're living in those areas. You're getting pineapples, lemons, limes, bananas. Like I would love to be able to grow my own mangoes because I love mango.
We freeze-dried mangoes.
But we don't get any of that stuff. I know they're so good.
I know they're so good.
So that's at least the perennial vegetables to keep in mind. Okay. Then you get into perennial fruits, which there are a ton. I mean, you think about every kind of bush, blackberries, elderberries, gooseberries, grapes, mulberries, you name it. There's so many different types of berries, but they come back year after year. I mean, you have to get them established though. So that's the thing. Get those fruits now.
Yeah.
Get them planted, let them establish. The other thing is you need bees, and it's surprising to me how many people don't understand the value of bees. Or what, bees make the world go around. They don't, you need bees to cross-pollinate. You need the bees to cross-pollinate your trees. You can't just plant a pear tree and have it grow pears. I just planted one and I'm so mad at myself. I haven't told my wife yet this, but I'm sure she's going to hear about it on this podcast. But last year we planted 3 apple trees, 2 Golden Delicious, which is our favorite type of apple. 2 Honeycrisp apples, which is our favorite type of apple. Yep. And then the Golden Delicious. Now, for those that can actually see our screen or see our podcast, just seeing JT do the look of, oh yeah, they're so good for the Honeycrisp apples. I actually sent him some freeze-dried cinnamon Honeycrisp apples, and he's like, dude, much better taste than freeze-dried apple.
Hands down, much better than like the Galas or any other one. Like the freeze-dried Honeycrisp with a dab of cinnamon just was glorious.
Honeycrisps. They're so sweet. They're crisp, wonderful flavor. Probably my all-time favorite. And everybody's got, Galas, Fujis. I know I liked Fujis for a while, but some of those apples, and you'll learn this as you start getting into like making pies or making, doing preserves or doing any kind of canning. Some apples aren't good for that kind of stuff. They're too soft. They turn to mush. Some apples are best for applesauces versus some apples are best for pies. It's stuff you're going to learn. But for my trees, I have the 3 apple trees. They're all within, I think it's like a 5-foot radius. I think I've got 5 feet in between each tree, which is what you need in order for them to be able to pollinate. But you need the bees to cross-pollinate them. My peach tree is a self-pollinating, but my pear tree is not a self-pollinating, and I thought it was. So now I have to go buy another pear tree. Yep. So it can cross-pollinate, so I can actually get pears. But that thing took off.
That's not the end of the world.
No, but it takes time. That's what people don't realize. You have to plant it. It has to take time to bear fruits. You're not going to plant a tree and then be like, oh, next year I have apples. Sometimes it takes 2 to 5 years to get it to a point where it can actually start bearing fruit. Yeah. And just like the asparagus or the trees or whatever, some of them you don't even do anything for the first year. Like for the asparagus, you let it grow out and grow into a bush. You do not cut or use a single asparagus. You let it grow out so that it can establish its root system so that it's going to be stronger, so it'll survive the winds and all that kind of stuff. And the more roots that get out, the more nutrients it absorbs. So the more fruit you're going to bear, stuff like that. But anyways, long story short.
Is garlic another one?
No, but it's a long-term storage, which is the next
Okay.
category we'll get to afterwards. But I've got a whole 4-foot by 20-foot bed of garlic right now. Soft neck garlic. So you got soft neck and hard neck are the two different types.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did an entire garden bed.
Don't you plant that in the fall and then let it go over winter and then it comes up in spring?
Depends on your region. So for us up north, yes, planting it in the winter time and then you harvest it in the spring. But I wasn't really planning, for you and your giant, massive garden where you've got plenty of space to grow whatever you want whenever you want. It's no big deal. But for me, I only have the 2 garden beds because the rest of my dirt is clay. And I can't plant all my potatoes that are, if I open this door right now, you'll probably see the vines crawling into my office because they're falling off the pool table. It's ridiculous. But anyways, so we talked about the different perennial vegetables. Fruits, we started talking about the different types. You've got your different berries. Some of those berries provide a lot of health benefits. Elderberries are very strong. It's very well known in the prepper community that elderberries are your go-to survival berries. It's what you eat or take when you're coming down with the flu or you need to boost up your immune system. They're super high in vitamin C. They're super high in a lot of different vitamins. But we have a friend that makes elderberry syrup, and I need that recipe. I'm going to do whatever I can to try to get that recipe from her. But she bought it twice. My wife bought it twice from her. And it wasn't too expensive. I want to say like she charged, let's say $15 for a jar, a pretty decent sized jar. And I was taking, 30 milliliter medicine cup of that twice a day when I was sick. And I felt like it reduced my sickness time. Like I was only sick for like 2 days with a cold that would normally take me about a week. Because during this time of year, or well, now that we're coming out of it, but the October to December, that's when October is when I always get sinus infections. So it's happened every year for as long as I can remember. I generally have an idea on how long those are going to take. Drinking that elderberry syrup was fantastic. So it was sweet. It's like honey, elderberry. I think there was a little bit of maybe turmeric or cinnamon, something like that. But it just tasted like honey and sweetness. So something else to keep in mind, strawberries. We planted, so in the Holt homestead, we've got strawberries and blueberries. The strawberries I ended up getting from a friend, and we got 10 of them. If you don't know, strawberries spread like wildfire. So if you're going to plant it directly in the ground, just know that it will be everywhere. Yeah, just like your pumpkin situation like you talked about in the last podcast. They are just as aggressive. And so we have ours in a little planter on our back deck. And I just keep on scooping up the vines to put them back in, so they just keep on recirculating into the dirt to make more and more strawberry plants. So, but this year I need to do something with it. And so I think I've got at least one bed I need to build out. I'm thinking about doing a second bed just for strawberries because we love strawberries. But even 10 strawberry plants does not give you enough strawberries for a person per week. You get like 3 per week, 4 per week. It's not anything that's, anything you can make a pie or jam or anything like that with. So we want to do a lot of strawberries this year.
Yeah. And like you bring up a lot of great points with all of that. Remember we're talking at least in my mind, we're going down the road of your year supply of whatever is gone.
Yeah.
Because you ate it. Right, yep. You've prepared for that. You've used it. Successful. You're alive a year later. Now what? Right? We're talking about perennial plants, perennial vegetables, perennial fruits, things like that.
That will come back on their own.
That will come back on their own. Right.
Yeah.
And then preserving that and doing all that. My brain and. You make a great point about the perennial plants, and even on the medicine side. Okay, my year supply of medications are gone.
Yeah,
I mean, now you have to turn to medicinal medicines, things like that.
Which is so funny because the I don't want to say the media, but just today, in today's mindset, some people are like, oh, the hippies or the, whatever. There's always some kind of derogatory whatever mindset. But I mean, plants is what all of our medicines are based off of today. They're just turned into a pill form. They've been ground up, they've been grounded, turned into a powder, turned into a pill, and then we're consuming it. Some of them are genetically made. Some of them are actually just our normal plants. You get your mushrooms that provide a lot of benefits that you put in your teas. What do you think teas are? Gosh, I can't imagine some kind of scenario where I can't get tea or coffee because we get all of our, and that's the other thing, coffee. A lot of people love coffee, but it all comes from down south or, certain areas of the world that's not here in the United States.
Yeah.
So
I am going to make it a life mission to figure out how to grow coffee in Wisconsin.
It's, probably not going to happen, but good luck.
I'm gonna figure it out. We're engineers. We have engineering minds. We will figure this crap out. Now, I could probably successfully go coffee with the grid, with enough heat sources, lighting, and all that other stuff that I already have. But when you're talking about grid down, then if your solar system doesn't make it, then you have to survive without power. If your solar system happens to make it, then you have a little bit more options, but you don't have a lot more options unless you have this massive battery bank that can store 100 kilowatt hours of power that you could run. I could run my house for a month off 100 kilowatt hours of storage. But
and just something that, we'll go back to the different items here, but one more thing to keep in mind that I think everybody should look into at some point in time in their lifetime. But what were the trades back in the day? Okay, when you had the Great Merchant Road and you're looking at from Asia to Europe and going from Europe over to the Americas, what food items were a necessity? Some of them aren't even food items. You've got salt to be able to preserve your food. You've got pepper to be able to provide spice or flavor to your food. You've got cinnamon. These are all things that people are generally like, oh yeah, if the scenario, if it came down to it, I needed to grow my own food, I'd be fine, no problem. Well, a lot of the ingredients that you use to make your certain food items just won't be available. So just keep that in mind as well on what used to be traded back in the day, what is actually grown in your area, what can you easily get in your area, and what things can't you get in your area. Those are some of the things that you should be preserving or bulking up on, because I didn't know this until this year, or last year, sorry, but different types of salt. We all know there's table salt, and we know there's like pink Himalayan salt versus white salt versus iodide, whatever salt. But what you don't realize is there's salt for flavoring your food, and there's salt for pickling, and there's salt for preserving your food, like meat. There's salt for, there's a lot of different kinds of salt. And you've got all different kinds of grinds of salt. So you start getting into the powders versus the hard crystals that you could break apart.
And salt is salt's a mineral. It's not a plant.
Comes out of the ground.
It comes out of the rocks in the ground, and you have to understand. And that's another thing about long-term survival, long-term sustainability is if I'm in a grid down, and I'm having to preserve food. If I don't have salt. And I don't know. Where the heck do you mine it? How do you get freaking salt?
There are a lot of great series on Netflix on how America was built, whatever. They've got different kinds. Or it's not on Netflix. I think it might be on Hulu, actually. But look up on Google how America was built. And you've got different versions like frontiersmen or corporations or whatever. But I think there's a frontiersman one where it starts going into like Daniel Boone and just your famous people of our history. But they actually go into some of those scenarios like colonists used to wait for weeks to get a supply of salt or months for a supply of salt so that they could preserve, and they would buy a barrel of salt. But know that if that barrel of salt gets ruined, I'm toast. I can't preserve any meats, so I can't live long term.
Yeah.
But really fascinating, all of those. And you see that in a lot of shows of the past. Another really good show is Washington Spies. If you want to learn about our history and like 1776 and the different like spy methods that they used back then during war times, but also your common just living, you know, cabbage and salt and having to preserve your food, that gives you an all-around history lesson that's really, really good. So highly recommend that. But
It's called Washington Spies.
Washington Spies. They had it on Netflix and it got removed. I assume because it was too American, but you know, that's just me. I just noticed a lot more shows are getting stripped from networks these days. I'm sure it was because they needed more room for some other show, but that's the reason I'm going with.
Needed room?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. That's what they sell people is. We need the space for more great shows. Space is cheap. All right.
We're running out of hard
Yeah.
drives, everybody. Okay.
My hard disk can't fill it up. Anyways,
we're not going to go down that road. But the I know one question you have not answered for me.
Sorry. Go ahead.
We can kind of wrap with this, or we can keep talking. Whatever. One question you didn't answer for me in the beginning. You mentioned the term that had gorilla in it, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Guerrilla gardening or guerrilla something.
Guerrilla gardening. So, guerrilla gardening is a term used for planting fruits, vegetables, whatever you want, planting something not on your land. Okay. So it could be a neighbor's yard, it could be a trail, it could be off the side of a highway. And you see and hear more about guerrilla gardening along the aspects. And I know there's going to be some people like, is that illegal or is that, whatever? Imagine you take a running trail every day, okay? Sometimes running trails aren't paved perfectly with fences and, you've got some kind of HOA over it that makes sure it stays tidy and whatever. Some of them are just somebody's used an excavator and took down a line of trees, and I've got a lot of those paths around us. You can plant whatever you want, certain kinds of berries, blueberries, strawberries, whatever. So if you don't necessarily have the space or the land for it, but it's something that's easily accessible that like, hey, I'm going to be going for a run and I can harvest some stuff. That's always an option. If you know some like farmland that's not being used, or some land that's not being used and it's had a for sale sign on it for the last 5 years, just go out there and stick some asparagus in the ground or you don't want to put anything where you have to go out and continually maintain it.
Yeah.
But how do you think wild blackberries or blueberries or, whatever, they just appeared there one day? You know what I mean? Like, you're doing just that. You're putting something there that will continue to grow, and you can always go and just randomly show up, harvest something that nobody's even aware about, and then head back home. You'll actually hear about it more in like the prepping communities where, say you had to go off grid. You always have you hear terminologies like your bug out bag or your if you bug in versus bug out. So bug in means you're just staying at home and you're hunkering down for when things get really bad. Sometimes you can't hunker down because of weather events, military, whatever the case may be, and you need to bug out. Well, that's where the discussions start going into play on, say your house is ambushed for some reason and you have to leave everything you have here. Where do you pick up things along the way to your bug out location or to your friend's house or to your parents' house? For your next safe location, do you have a way of storing things so that you have a backup supply? So, if people have a relative that they can go to because they've got an extra set of clothes or food or something like that, if you have to walk to get to that location, are you going to be able, and you don't have any food, how are you going to be able to keep yourself fed along the way? Yeah. So that's where those kind of tactics on guerrilla gardening come into play. It's I'm setting something in certain locations along the way, caches or caches, however you pronounce it. There are videos out there. You go on YouTube and you'll find people take like a 5-gallon bucket and they'll put, an extra pair of clothes, something to start a fire, a shelter, and some emergency food supplies. They'll store it on their property or along a route, or, sometimes, it is illegal just to go on somebody's property and dig a hole and put a 5-gallon bucket. So don't do that.
That's where my brain went. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go to my neighbor's yard. And just...
But if you have somebody that says, hey, yeah, go ahead, man. I don't care. If you want to just do something in the back part of the property or whatever. Some people have a lot of land and don't use it. And some people are much more obliged to letting you put fruit or vegetables on their land because it's going to benefit them as well.
Yeah, they're going to get some too.
I handed out 20 something crowns of asparagus to a neighbor who has their own property off, 45 minutes away. And they planted all that asparagus on their property. And they said, hey, thanks. I really appreciate that a lot. So if I ever need asparagus, I now have a friend that I know they have it on their property. And if I ever need asparagus, I'm sure they'd be like, it was your asparagus to start off with. I'm happy to give you some of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what guerrilla gardening is just discreetly planting things in different locations where it's going to come up. It's going to be something that's harvestable. A lot of people aren't going to be like, if you wander off the trail from a hiking trail and start gathering a bunch of blueberries, they're not going to be like, hey, that's somebody else's blueberries.
Yeah. And it's, and it's low maintenance. You're not out anything if if nothing happens. Obviously, you're not down anything. But if something does happen, you have a potential benefit from that. And like this whole idea and this whole topic we started about the long haul, like planning for the long haul, is I think really important to continue the conversation over the next couple shows about different areas. Like my mind is going crazy, not just with we just hit on perennial plants and a little bit of medicinal stuff. And I'm like, okay, my brain's going to, okay, I have chickens now, but you know what? In 5, whenever those chickens are going to end up getting old and dying. So if I don't have a way to reproduce chickens, I need a rooster. I can't have a rooster. What's my plan? There's so many things we can go down with and this gets into the broader perspective of prepping in general and the long-termness of prepping. And this is where a lot of these YouTube channels come in about how to prep and how to do things. But the point that I want to make is this may sound crazy to some people. Why are you putting so much brain power and brain focus into something that probably won't happen long term? I think people can accept, we might go into a recession for a year and things may be hard, so I'll prep some stuff, food, water, things like that, just so I can hedge against inflating costs of food and stuff like that. I understand that part, and there's a lot of people that accept that, especially after COVID and the supply chain issues. More and more people are getting on this prepping train on the short term, saying, okay, I'll go get a 6-month supply of freeze-dried food and store it just in case 6-month side. So, and that's great. That's a great step. That's good, but there's also the long haul, and this is where a lot of people fall off, is when you start talking about regenerative gardening and permaculture and animals, and how are you going to sustain yourself if there is no supply chain or there is no power? Because yes, the odds are, I don't even want to say the odds are low, because as far as the sun kicking off a solar flare, something that really, really turns everybody's lives upside down. The risk of that is so high now. You almost have to start thinking that way from
any aspect. Okay. It's not like the news isn't playing. If people can shut themselves out as much as they want, but you're hearing of war with Russia. You're hearing about, grid down, you're hearing about weather events, you hear about this stuff all day long, and a lot of people just shut the news out and shut that kind of stuff off. But if you hear about it and it's happening on a consistent basis and it's happening more often, imagine 20 years ago or when you were back in middle school or high school or whatever, I don't feel like there was nowhere near the amount of news and attention on half the stuff that's going on today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we're in different mindsets today and different paths of life and whatever the case may be, but you can't say it's not going to happen. There's so many different variables that can come into play that tomorrow we could be in full war where a nuke is launched. All somebody has to do is press a button. And I'm not trying to put everybody into a panic attack and anxiety and, whatever case may be. But if you really don't think that that's possible, maybe you need to go to somewhere to talk to somebody to find out why you don't think that that's possible. I mean, I don't see how you could shut out the world that much.
Yeah.
To not think that there is a possibility of something happening every point of your day. If you drive down the road, it's possible to get hit in a car accident.
I think a lot of it is perception. Like, people understand, I can get in a car accident. People understand because they've seen it. They've seen the effects of weather events and all that. People have never seen a nuclear war. People have never seen a solar flare that has affected a power grid. So they can't perceive what that might be. So in the perception mind, taking World War III or nuclear war, people may say, well, we're America. We're untouchable when it comes to like a land invasion. Well, I mean, it would be difficult for a foreign entity to come and invade the U.S. The likelihood of that is super low. I mean, for crying out loud.
Unless you're going across the southern border, because that's just open at the moment. If you're going across
the southern border, right, and let's just say there's no U.S. military, just the amount of people that have guns in Texas is enough to like defend that off.
Yeah.
But my point was being like, whether it's a perceived thing. People can't perceive or understand what that could look like, so therefore they shut themselves off to the idea or the possibility that things could happen that they've never experienced before in their lives. So the likelihood of World War III and all that stuff, we're at high risk, but this is not something like, yes, it is a focus of mine, at least just watching that stuff. But again, for us, I think we're more likely to get hit with a solar flare this cycle than we are World War III to happen this sun cycle. And the solar flare is one of those things that's happened before. We have historical data that says that it has happened before. It has affected technology before in the past. Granted, it was just a telegraph system. But if that were to happen today, we're all screwed. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about the long haul and why we talk about this stuff. Because mainly, I think it's the solar flares can take us out this sunspot cycle. And if it doesn't, hey, we got 11 years to prepare for the next one. And if this one doesn't take us out, the next one definitely will. So in any case, don't want to get on that soapbox, but give perspective of why we talk about this. So going back to the perennials and the plants, like, this is one segment of potentially many. Like the next show we do on Thursday, we could talk about animals, or we can go into more in depth on water or all that.
Well, I think I think on the next one we should wrap up with or I could wrap it up on this session. How long have we been talking? I don't even know how long.
Hour and 13.
Okay, we should probably wrap it up then.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about for the next one is perennial flowers, which some may think, oh, why would you talk about flowers? But you can use it as a business. Bees spread pollen. You could use it for teas. There's a lot of aspects when it comes to that. So wrap up with the flowers and then talk about your longer growing items or season items for storage. So potatoes, onions, what stuff can last a long time in storage? What kind of things are easy to grow that I could stick down in my basement or in a bag in a cold, dark place, and it'll still be available in the next 2, 3, 8 months.
Okay.
So I'd say let's go into like those growing items, and I think that'll be a big eye opener for people as well.
Yeah, that's good. Let's end on a happy note because you have some asparagus you want to show.
So, okay, so just some context. I've been working a lot. I haven't gone outside a lot lately, and I just happened to look out my backyard today. 2 days ago, I looked out my backyard. There was nothing outside, okay? We got snow yesterday. Today, I look out there, and there is asparagus. I put a Pam spray can next to it to show size comparison. In 2 days, it's now 2 times the length of a can of Pam.
Oh,
but these I mean, it comes up on its own. I didn't have to add anything.
It snowed. It snowed the other day, right? So it didn't kill it.
It snowed. No. But that's, I mean, it's as thick as my thumb. These suckers are huge.
That's cool.
And then here's all my garlic. So I told you, I did a
my
4 foot
gosh.
by 20 foot bed of garlic. Now, a lot of things I got to learn. You know, the tips are yellowing. Does that mean something?
Yeah.
These are a lot taller than the ones over on the other side, but I know I put the biggest bulbs on this end compared to the other end, so I know that's probably why. But when do I need to harvest it? Should I be doing anything to help boost it?
Yeah.
I still have to research all that because I don't know. I researched it 8 months ago, and I can't remember it now. So lots of things are happening on the Holt homestead, and I know you're going to be posting more pictures here soon as your things start to grow. But
yeah, as my stuff starts to grow, we'll keep everybody posted. I just recorded some content, some fresh content on the pressure tank system I'm doing for the garden, because I have to expand it, and you know, it rained the other day, so I got some water in the collection barrels, and so I was doing some videos on that, thinking I can post videos separately on like some of those builds. But I mean, that's the goal of this thing. We're just gonna, this year I'm really trying to commit to posting more videos, like doing more video content outside of like the live show, that we can also put for people to have a resource. So with that said, like, hey, we've talked about perennials, we've talked about things. Next podcast, we'll talk about flower power. And I got some other things I want to talk about next episode that are outside of the planting, but we can, you know, and if there's anything you guys want to listen to or talk about, like, feel free to leave a comment in any of the platforms you're listening to, whether it's Facebook, YouTube. We're not on Rumble yet. We need to get on Rumble, but feel free to leave a comment and just ask a question. Be like, hey, can you guys talk about this, or what's your experience with that X, Y, and Z? I mean, we love engagement. So any questions, leave in the comments. Otherwise, like, yeah, we're going to wrap this one up, and we'll see you guys on Thursday. Any final words?
Yeah.
We good?
No, I think I'm good. Have a great rest of the week, everybody.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you for listening to the Preppin' Patriots podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a 5-star review. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so at contact@preppinpatriots.stream. And finally, this episode was sponsored by nobody.